My name is Michael Jones. I'm the managing editor of Mathematical Reviews. I've only been in that position for about 9 months. Before that, though, I did spend 11 years at Mathematical Reviews as an associate editor or content editor in charge of certain areas of mathematics, math subject classifications 05 and 91, so combinatorics and graph theory and game theory, mathematical finance, math applied to the social sciences. So what I'd like to do today is give you a little bit of a background of MathSciNet before going through a number of different searches, showing some of the features of MathSciNet. And throughout, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them at any time. I understand that in the Zoom environment, sometimes that can be a little bit difficult, but we'll see how it goes. So let's go ahead and get started with a little bit of a background. So MathSciNet is an online database consisting of reviews from experts. So editors send out papers. Experts become reviewers, and they put in some qualifiers of what they're interested in reviewing and what they are experienced in. And then we end up sending papers out to those experts who write reviews. Even though we started in 1940, we have bibliographic data going back into the 1800s. Using MathSciNet at your institution will also include links to articles and journals. So you from MathSciNet, you're one click away from getting the end result. If you're searching for an article, you should be able to click and then get to that article right away. Some of the features are that we have some linked reference lists that allow you to navigate within MathSciNet and find out who's citing who, so that you can sort of what I call citation hop, and then maybe determine if an earlier paper might also be useful for your own research. And because we have this data, we also then accumulate data, citation information on different articles, books, and journals. So I mentioned those reviewers. We have over 23,000 reviewers right now, and they come from 142 countries. And our database consists of nearly 3.8 million items. And that's, of course, for those journal articles. Also articles from collections, and we'll see some collections or series later on today. And then also from books. So historically, Mathematical Reviews was a paper publication. It was launched in 1940, sort of at the time of World War II, when Otto Neubauer was an editor at Zentralblatt, and he ended up coming to the United States and founding Mathematical Reviews. It was first housed in Providence, where the AMS offices are. It ended up that just recently it was Otto's birthday, and that's something that we celebrate at Mathematical Reviews. That was May 26th. He would have been 121 years old. And our executive editor, Ed Dunn, has a blog called Beyond Reviews, where he talks about, at times, new features of MathSciNet. But in this particular case, he ended up talking about the history of MathSciNet and Mathematical Reviews. So, of course, in 1940, it wasn't a website. It was a print publication, and the first publication had 32 pages, and it included 176 reviews. And in 1940, it was difficult to get an article. So reviews helped to determine whether or not a researcher should go to the effort of getting a full article. Times, of course, changed from 1940 as we moved closer to the present. And in the 1980s, you could actually get Mathematical Reviews through a dial-up modem. And then also as a CD-ROM in 1989, something called MathSciDisk. I remember living outside New York City and going into Columbia University and using MathSciDisk in the about 1994 and 1995. In 1996, Mathematical Reviews went online and changed its name, sort of, to highlight this aspect of it, and called it MathSciNet because it also contains some other features. And so if we bring it up to today, it's pretty easy to get an article. If your library subscribes to a wide berth of electronic offerings, it's pretty simple to find an article. But now the reverse problem sort of happens. There are so many articles, but the reviews are helpful in a different way. They help us determine whether or not to read the full article and what the content of the article is. A lot of times we may be concerned as mathematical researchers about what the content of a particular article is, because we may need a result for our own work, and a review will let us know whether or not that article covers some of the material that we're interested in. So one of the other reasons why MathSciNet is useful is that not only then are there so many articles, but there's going to be so many more. The number of peer-reviewed journals in math and science and technology has grown fairly consistent. Over the last 300 years, it's had an annual rate of about 3%, according to this report in 2015. What that means is that MathSciNet has grown considerably, and at about actually at about a 3.6% growth rate. So if we look at about how many items we're adding to the database every year, last year we added over 130,000 items to the database. And you can see since the year 2000 that this is growing quite rapidly. So besides the ability to search and hopefully to evaluate this ever-increasing growth of the literature, it can also help you focus on some higher quality materials. Because with the ever-increasing growth of the literature, there's also been an increase in the number of questionable journals, as evidenced by the websites Retraction Watch and PubPeer. There also used to be a site called Beall's List, which would call into question some journals' practices. There's also a number of pay-for-play journals, and some of those don't end up refereeing at high standards, or possibly maybe with little to no refereeing. And there's also an increased case, just because of the numbers even, of things like plagiarism and self-plagiarism. And so MathSciNet allows you to focus on some of the higher quality mathematics, and also then see if something has changed maybe in the literature, like if an article has an addenda or an errata associated with it, or if an article was retracted, we end up linking that information in our database. What we also do at MathSciNet is we spend a lot of effort trying to make sure that we have the author identification correct for an article. And that may seem like that should be pretty simple, but there are so many people with the same names that knowing exactly who the person was who wrote something isn't always so easy. And we'll look at some examples of that in a few minutes. So the other aspect is because of one of the values of MathSciNet is because we collect all this data, we know what articles are referencing other articles if they're part of our reference list journal program. And this is a good way to sort of look at and keep track of references. If you're using just web searches, sometimes you get references from things like a presentation, slides online. And our reference data will be to actually publish literature as opposed to unpublished literature or talks. I did mention citations, and we use something called the Mathematical Citation Quotient, or MCQ. And it's just a ratio. It's a count of the total number of citations to the journal that have been indexed by mathematical reviews over a 5-year period. Those citations come from these reference list journals, and we'll talk a little bit more about those later. There are 743 journals and 4 series currently, and we increase that every year. And we compare that to what's called the All MCQ, which does the same thing for all journals, just to get an idea of how well cited a journal is. So this is kind of comparable to some of the things like impact factors that some of the journals will tout. So
may I ask a question?
Yes.
Sorry, may I? How are the reference list journals chosen?
We'll look at, so it becomes a question of quality of the journal. Some easy things are publication practices. And then we will bring that up, bring potential candidates up to what's called MREC, which is the Math Review's editorial committee. And we'll provide data about the number of publications, other information like the number of references to those journals already. And then the Mathematical Review's editorial committee, with support this information provided from editors at Mathematical Reviews, will end up voting on it. But how they get to the editors for consideration to being brought up to the editorial committee is either we see high quality journals that we think should be included, or a lot of the times we hear from users who would like to have that information in the database. So if there's any journals that you would like to have considered for this type of category reference list journal, at the end of the talk, please give me a list, or you can always email me. Or in general, our acquisitions department ends up compiling a list of all the submitted requests to become reference list journals from our users.
Thank you.
Did that help?
Yes, yes, okay. Thank you.
Sure. So we're based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That's where I am right now. We have a staff of about 80 people. 18 of them are PhDs in mathematics. We have copy editors, an acquisition department that communicates with all the publishers. Our cataloging department works on making sure that our author work is correct, so our author identification. And they also work on presenting the data in our database in a way that is consistent with best practices for librarians. We have translators for articles in other languages, and a number of our editors as well can read in different languages. Our IT department works on both improving our database and also working on our internal applications so that we can deliver the product. And then we have a reviewer data services department that interacts with reviewers. So if you're a reviewer for MathSciNet, then you've probably at times received emails reminding you about maybe a review that you haven't been as timely as we would like you to be on. Those are issued from our Review and Data Services Department. So if you email mathrev, M-A-T-H-R-E-V @ams.org, that goes to our Reviewer Data Services Department, and that's usually used by reviewers. So over the course of this demonstration, I'm going to do some sample searches in MathSciNet. I'm going to hit on some of the things that I think are particularly nice, like our author profile pages, links to the Math Genealogy Project, the journal pages, some series pages. I'll show you what's currently used and show you what will be released shortly. We'll talk a little bit about institution codes so that you can search, say, institutions and compare different institutions. We have, other than just journal articles, we also have, and books and collection articles, we have theses. We'll talk a little bit about those and what are called DML, or digital mathematical library items. And some of the other new access items that we have, something called the Current Index of Statistics, which is a product that a number of statistics organizations used to keep updated. They no longer do, but their past data is now being housed through MathSciNet. And then I'll also, this one's an important one. It's so important that I'll give this information twice, both at the beginning of the demonstration and also at the end, and that is how to have mobile access to MathSciNet, which will allow you to have it on any of your devices when you're not linked to your through your university. So let me go ahead and hop over to the front page of MathSciNet. So when you log into MathSciNet, this is what you see. Notice up here in the right-hand corner where it says remote access, it says 83. I have 83 days where I can have my computer not connected to mathematical reviews, which is where I'm connected now. And I'll still have access to MathSciNet. And any time that I'm connected to my home institution or any institution that has MathSciNet where I have access to it, I can click on that remote access button, which I'm going to do now. And when I do, it will bring up a remote access license agreement, which I'm just going to accept here. And it says now that my pairing is successful. I'm going to back up a couple just to get back to where I was. Oh, well, and of course, let me refresh that. And you'll notice now up in the right-hand corner that I now have 90 days access to MathSciNet. So I don't have to be connected to any institution for 90 days. I'll have access to MathSciNet wherever I am. All right, I thought what I would do first is start with maybe an author search. And I don't want this to seem vain, but I'm going to purposely use me for a second, just because my name is extremely common. You'll see there that there's lots of Michael Joneses. And if I did a search here, you'd see that there's lots of them. This is me right here. That's, you know, I know that there's many Michael Joneses because whenever I come into the country, into the United States, they always stop me because they think I'm a different Michael Jones that's wanted on some FBI list or something. Michael Jones is not even near the most common name. If we take like a Chinese name like Li here, we end up getting lots and lots of different authors with the same last name. And I could click through here to try to determine which one I was looking for. It might be better to use a name that is a little bit less common, but for which there's actually two, and someone who's at your institution. So Fernando Miranda, there are two Fernando Mirandas listed in our database. This one right here that's already sort of highlighted is the one who's in your Center of Mathematics. And this is his author profile page. So it lists his MR author ID number up here, what his earliest publication was, how many publications are in our database, how many citations we have in our database to his articles. You can see here co-authors. We can look at publications, the Math Genealogy Project, and citations. And there's also sort of a graphic down here that looks at the distribution of the publications. So Fernando works in a number of different areas. And then you can also see how that distribution is for the number of citations. Some of this information is going to be updated in the course of this year. It may have been updated already if we weren't in a shelter-in-place order and working remotely, where our IT department has had to change what their most important tasks are to make sure that we can keep MathSciNet working as we work from home. But we are redesigning some of this information and getting rid of sort of these graphics. We're doing things differently. And when I show you the current index of statistics later on, that will give you a little bit of an insight to some of the changes that are coming to MathSciNet. So what I'd like to do from this page is check some of the other links here. So if you look, I can click on Fernando, his Math Genealogy Project. You can see his advisor, who's actually in our group right now, Lisa Santos. And we could then see that his PhD was in partial differential equations, etc. We could hop through here if we wanted to and see where Lisa received her PhD and who her advisor was. So I'm going to pop back over to the MR author ID page, and let's look at some publications. So if I click on the publication links, from here I can list everything that's in our database for Fernando Miranda. You can see like this item right here, this first item is reviewed, and we see who the reviewer is. Hopefully you can see my screen. I'm moving the cursor around. And I'll try to move it so it's maybe easier to see and it is a little bit more visible. So up here on the first item in this list, we see has been reviewed. A number of these articles have been reviewed. This one down here, which was a correction, was just indexed. You'll notice on the left-hand side, we have what are called facets, and these are relatively new within the last couple of years. It allows you to narrow the search. So there's a list of 20 items in this list. We could break it down by institution or authors and co-authors, or based on the primary classification. Was it like this article here? This was a 37 paper, so in a dynamical systems, it was viewed as a dynamical systems paper, or any of the papers that have a 35 primary, which is partial differential equations. So if you see here in that primary classification, I could narrow down the search of those articles, and also to what the journal is or what year the article was published. So those facets allow us to narrow our search. We can also search within the results here if there was a keyword that we were looking for. I'm going to back to the MR author page and show you some of the other things that we get from here. I'm going to focus here on citations, and we can see what articles are being cited in our database. And we can also see how many times they were cited. If I click on the article itself, on the MR number, that will bring us to an entry. So I'm going to select this, maybe this third one down here. So if I pick this third one that has 8 citations, it will bring up the review, which was a pretty short review. Up here in this right-hand corner here, there's a little box, and it'll indicate who's citing this paper. If I click on this, then I can see the different articles that are citing this work. I'm going to go back to this page for a second. This was the review of that article where we sort of citation hop. Actually, let me go back to that list of citations for a second. From this, I could now look at another review down here, sort of 2/3 towards the bottom of the screen. I'm going to click on that review for a second. This paper was reviewed. It has its reference list. So this was a reference list journal. And if I wanted to, I could then click on any of these MR links that would take me to the review of the paper from the reference list journal. And so for this, I think of this as sort of citation hopping. If I think that a paper that was referred to in another paper may be interesting, then I can get there directly from the review, from the references of the review. All right, let's go back to the MR author ID page. And I'm going to focus over here. We have the co-authors. And if we look at the co-authors, one of them is Lisa Santos. I'm going to click on hers. I want to focus on a difference between their MR author profile pages. You can personalize this page up here in the corner where it says Edit Author Profile. If you have a AMS account, then you're able to edit your profile and put in a picture over here, as well as your email address or maybe a web address. Lisa has done that with, so when I click on that, I get all the papers that are co-authored between her and Fernando. And if I click on her name here in this first entry, or anytime it appears, that will pull up her MR author page. And you'll see that she has her email address listed. And if she wanted to, she could also include a web address here, as well as a picture. And likewise, we see here's her co-authors, the same type of information that we had before from the earlier, from Fernando Miranda's MR author page. So I'm going to quickly just show you one more of these pages. This is the executive editor of Mathematical Reviews, and you see that he includes a website here. You can also include your full name and native script, which for him is just his name in English. And then he has a picture, of course, as well. If you would like to edit your page, your MR author page, and you're having problems doing so, you can let me know. I have the capability to edit other people's pages, being the managing editor. So if you ever have any difficulties with that, you can just email Math Reviews or email me directly, and I can help you with updating your information. All right, let me step back now to the main search page. So here's the main search page. And I'm going to go to the third tab here where it says Journals, and I'm going to put in a journal. I'm going to put in Studia Logica, and if I search on that, you'll see that the journal was originally published by the Polish Academy of Sciences, and then they changed their name a little bit, so we no longer index the older version. We still have all that information in our database, but the no longer index just means that it's not current. And you'll see here that the current version is indexed cover to cover. That means we take all of the articles, and it's a reference list journal. So if I click on this, we had author pages. This is what's called the journal page. So from here, it gives me information about the publisher and what issues are in MathSciNet. we have the most recent issue is the third issue from 2020. I could list all of the issues. If I click over here by the website, it doesn't take me to a generic Springer.com, but it is published by Springer, and it would take me to the journal's page. I would be leaving MathSciNet, so I'm not going to do that right now. If I scroll down, I get some other information. So this tells me right here, since it says reference list, it actually tells me how long it's been a reference list journal. So since 2000. We have 2,285 publications from this journal in our database. We have additional information. I can go to the earliest issue, the most recent issue. Here's the math citation quotient information for this journal broken down by year. I can look at citations made over time as well as self-citations if I was concerned about that. Some of this information, the way that we display this now is different than what we used to do before. You can see how many publications there are each year, as well as what the distribution is in subject area over the last 3 years, as well as all time. I can also look at authors who are publishing here over the last 3 years, as well as all time. If I scroll back up to the top here, I can click on all the publications from this journal where it says publications listed. If I click on that 2,285, then I'll get a list of all the items in our database from this journal. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on that. Like before, I have facets over here that will allow me to narrow the search if I wanted to. So some of this information is hot off the press. So these ones that say prelim, that means that the review isn't in the database yet and it's still in process. So this, like right here, you'll notice that Taishi Kurashi, oh, my pronunciation's poor. This is not a link. So we haven't done the author work yet and verified what author in the database this is yet, because this article was just included into the database and our author work is a little bit behind on it. Actually, this guy right here is one of our editors, Andres Caicedo. This data was just added because when I had this prepared for last week, this data didn't come up on this page. So what I'm going to do is actually search within these results for one of your colleagues, Gilda Ferreira. You'll see here that some of her papers have appeared in Studio Logica. I'm going to click on this paper right here, the one from 2019. Because this one has been reviewed and the other one up above here that's newer is still in that preliminary status. So I'm going to click on her most recent publication that we have the information, complete information for in this journal. If I do that, you'll see the review. Here's the paper. It's been cited once so far. If I scroll down here, you'll notice that the person who wrote the review included citations to different items that are in our database. So the way that those math citation quotients, the citations that they're counting include both citations from reviews as well as citations from reference lists. This is a reference list journal, so you'll see here that there are items that appear in our database that are matched up. There's also some other things that are here. We actually include references to the archive. So right here, reference number 9, there is a reference to an archive article, and we've made that link hot. So if you wanted to go to this archive article, you could click on that leave MathSciNet and go to the archive. So I want to go back up to the review here and show you one of the features that people really like about MathSciNet, and that is I can select an alternative format of the review. Now, what that means is that I could view this as a PDF instead of looking at it through MathJax, which is what I'm currently using. I could also export it and make it so that it's easier for printing, the PDF for printing. But these three other categories down here are the ones that a lot of people really love. I'm going to click on the BibTeX one. And the information that it brings up, I could just cut and paste and put directly into the bibliography of an article that I was writing. And then I'd have the citation information. So I could build my bibliography directly from MathSciNet and not have to end up typing that information myself and possibly making a mistake. You'll see that a lot of this information may not be something that you'd end up displaying in your references, like the classifications. But how you set up BibTeX will determine which pieces of that information will appear in your bibliography. All right, so we've seen how we can hop along through some citations, and we just saw that journal page, which was pretty useful. I'm going to go back to the journal page. Poking around on the journal page might help you determine whether or not you think this would be a good fit for your journal, for your article, if you're writing an article. You could go back to the list of all publications and put in some keywords and find out if the things that you're writing on would fit well for this journal. We have a similar type thing for series. And so I'm going to focus on a series here. There's a number of different fields here. I'm going to go to the one that says series. So if I click on series here, so this is the general publication search page where I can put in multiple pieces of information. I was looking at the tabs author and journals before. So this one is a little, allows me to have multiple things here, search under different criteria. So I'm going to put in Springer proceedings. And if I do that, I'll get the, whoop, that's not the one I wanted, but this one is down here, sort of the Springer proceedings in mathematics and statistics. I'm going to go ahead and open up that page. And you'll see that the Springer proceedings in mathematics and statistics, what we call the series page, is, well, it's lacking. So it's not nearly, doesn't nearly contain the information that the journal pages have. We're in the process of revising these pages, and I think actually that everything is about done, but because of the shelter-in-place order and not being in the building and our IT department focusing on other aspects right now, we haven't made this public yet, but I'm going to hop over to an internal view of the, here we go, an internal view of the series page. And you'll see that this is what the page will look like shortly. It compares the series to the all other series in the MCQ. And just like the other information that we had before, for the journal page, we can go through now and look at the information for the series. So I can look at author information, distribution of what people are publishing. Now, these end up maybe not always being as helpful because the series, at least this series, you'll see with the recent volumes that they're very, very diverse topics. So knowing that the most publications are in numerical analysis, which I saw at the bottom of the screen just tells me that there's been more volumes in numerical analysis. This particular series is all over the map. We see some number theory here, some algebra, some random graphs. So we see a number of different topics. I'm going to pop back over to the public version of MathSciNet and continue our searching for different types of information. I want to show you, I'm going to go directly to an MR number. So I'm going to search under MR number. One of the things I had mentioned during my presentation was that we link information. So here is a paper that was just published. The corrigendum was just published, and here's the article. Actually, I had that reversed. Here's the paper. Here's the article. Both of them have just come out, so we don't end up having reviews for them yet. This one's a little bit further along, which is a little bit unusual that the corrigendum has the author work done on it, and this one doesn't. And that's actually, oddly, the corrigendum was published here in earlier than the actual article was. And that's sometimes something that happens with electronic publishing, that some things get a little bit out of order. If you were looking for the review of this particular article, you might not notice that there was a corrigendum. So you'll see that these are linked together, and it makes it easy in MathSciNet to see that the authors have published some corrections and additions to this particular paper. What I'm going to do for the next couple minutes is sort of a grab bag where I'm going to look at some different types of searches. So it's going to be a little bit of a scatter shot. It'll be one topic, then another topic, and another topic, just to show you some of the ways to do some searches and some of the other information that we have that's available. So, you know what, let me go back to Fernando's page for a second and show you something in his list of publications. So I'm on his publication page, and I'm going to look at this review, his most recent paper in our database. And you'll notice here that next to his name in this view, you'll see that information about the Center for Mathematics ends up appearing here. So we call this an institution code, and you can actually see the institution code of all of the co-authors as well. What I'm going to do is search for that institution code, and that'll allow you to see publications from people at that institution. So if I come back over here to the publications page, one of the areas that I can search under is institution. I'm going to go ahead and put in the institution code, which I happen to write down from the Center of Mathematics. And if I do that, I get everything that every paper that has been published with that institution code. And you'll notice that that's not nearly as many publications as you would expect. What happens a lot of times is how an author represents the information on a particular, on a paper may affect how the institution code is written. So I'm going to shorten this a little bit just to, instead of focusing on the Center of Mathematics, just all things at the University of Minho. And I'm going to put in a wildcard here. And if I search this way, you'll see that there are a whole lot of additional publications. What's probably happened over time is that the name, the Center for Mathematics or Center of Mathematics, didn't exist at one point. And now that there are people affiliated with this center, they're using it. But those same people may have been at the institution for 15 years, and their earlier publications may have a slightly different address on them. And our cataloging will include every different institution code that the person uses at different times. I'm going to hop to another type of search just to show you that I'm going to do an anywhere search here. And if I use quotations, so I'm going to look up gamma convergence, and I'm going to put quotations around it. And you'll notice that I also have a \gamma. So I'm doing a search here that allows me to use some LaTeX code. And if I do this anywhere, or maybe I'll just do it in a title search, I'll get papers that have gamma convergence in it. So here's gamma convergence right here in this first entry. You'll notice that I'm not getting the word gamma, but I am getting the symbol gamma. All right, let me go back here to the main search page. And notice up here, there's a number of tabs up at the very top. I'm going to focus on the librarian page here. And if I click on that, you'll see resources for librarians. And these resources aren't just good for librarians. They're pretty good for other users as well, including authors. On the left-hand side here, you'll see Beyond Reviews, a link to the blog that I had mentioned before. There's also a link to MathSciNet by the numbers. If I click on that, you'll see the most recent information updated earlier today for the total number of publications, the total number of authors, how many journals are current, how many active reviewers, etc. If you look right here on searching MathSciNet, there's some information here that could help you if you're having difficulties in searching. Over on the right-hand side, there's some information about being a reviewer, including a guide for reviewers, which ends up being pretty helpful. Also on the right-hand side is a list of all of the reference list journals. So if we click on this, you'll see all of the journals that are reference list journals. So, and there are about 1,800 of them. So, actually, was it 1,800? It's not 1,800. That's the number of current journals. It's 753 journals and then these 4 series. All right. There's some other tools up here in that right-hand corner. What are free tools? Some of those are fun to play around with. You can compute your Erdős number or your connection to any other author that's in the database. And so that would be, you connect that by saying, I've co-authored a paper with author A, who's co-authored a paper with author B, who's co-authored a paper with Erdős. And the number of those distances gives you the Erdős number. Erdős, of course, was so prolific that it's believed that he sort of connects to more people than anyone else in the database. Let me do a couple of other searches here. I'm going to go and do a search on a thesis. Let me just search on do an anywhere search on thesis. And you'll see some theses here. This is data that comes from ProQuest. And if I click on this, then I could, by clicking that ProQuest link, go to the ProQuest site and get information about their thesis. Right now, this is not linked to this particular author, Daniel Lithgow. It was probably just entered into the, actually I know it was just entered into the database last week. So it hasn't been linked yet. Not all of that information does get linked, but we try to link that information to the author. If your thesis is in the database and it's not linked to you, or if you found papers that say maybe your maiden name changed if you got married, or you've published under different versions of your name and we didn't have those connected, you can always email us and we can update your author profile to include those other representations of your name so that someone searching for your work can get all of that information. I'm also going to do a search here to show you some DML items. I'm just going to pick a year here in the 1800s. I'm going to pick 1832, and you'll see some of the digital math library items dating back from what's called Krell's journal here from the 1800s. And so we end up having information in the database that is even before Mathematical Reviews, the print publication, started its run. So we often go back and fill in some previous information when it becomes available to us electronically. All right. We don't have all that much time left, so I'm going to scroll down here on this page. And you'll notice that there's some information here. One is that at the beginning of this year, the math subject classification list was updated. So the numbers for the next decade may have perturbed a little bit from the math subject classification list 2010. You can find out some of the information here. New information is often included on this front page. And then also, this is the one, though, that I wanted to show you. This is the current index to statistics. So if I click on this, you'll see a search box. The current index of statistics was originally developed by the Institute of Mathematical Statistics and the American Statistical Association. They stopped publishing it, which was online, in 2017. And they were interested in having us host this data. So we have now taken over their data, cleaned it up a little bit to put it more in a format that's closer to MathSciNet's format. And we can go ahead and search in here. I'm going to search Simpson's paradox because I was talking about it to some students a couple days ago. And I can see some information here on Simpson's paradox. Simpson types paradoxes from the Journal of Applied Probability, and I can scroll down. This is the summary of the article, or the abstract. There's some additional ways to refine your search and change the format here, kind of like the way that we would do things in MathSciNet. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but if you ever have a chance and you want to play around with the current index of statistics, some of the search tips, I'm going to, up here in the right-hand corner, there's some search tips. It gives you some information here on how to refine your search, as well as some search operators. And if you use those in this database, some of them are a little bit different than MathSciNet. And when we update MathSciNet, this current index to statistics is sort of our platform for testing out some of the things that may appear in MathSciNet in the next version of it, which we hope to get out later this year with some improved search capabilities.